Tunisian officials moved quickly Wednesday to contain the fallout after a leading opposition figure was assassinated outside his home. They announced that they would restructure the Islamist-led government and form a national unity cabinet as thousands took to the streets in protests that security forces beat back with tear gas. The killing of the politician, Chokri Belaid, one of Tunisia's best-known human rights defenders and a fierce critic of the ruling Islamist party, placed dangerous new strains on a society struggling to reconcile its identity as a long-vaunted bastion of Arab secularism with its new role as a proving ground for one of the region's ascendant Islamist parties. The explosion of popular anger, which led to the death of a police officer in the capital, posed a severe challenge to the governing party, Ennahda, which came to power promising a model government that blended Islamist principles with tolerant pluralism. Mr. Belaid was shot and killed outside his home in an upscale Tunis neighborhood as he was getting into his car on Wednesday morning. The Interior Minister, citing witnesses, said that 2 unidentified gunmen had fired on Mr. Belaid, striking him with 4 bullets. The killing, which analysts said was the first confirmed political assassination here since the overthrow of the autocratic leader, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, was a dark turn for the country that was the birthplace of the Arab uprisings of 2 years ago. It resonated in countries like Egypt and Libya that are struggling to contain political violence while looking to Tunisia's turbulent but hopeful transition as a reassuring example. Confronting violence, radicalism and the forces of darkness is the main priority for societies if they want freedom and democracy, Amr Hamzi, a member of Egypt's main secular opposition coalition, wrote on Twitter on Wednesday. Assassinating Chokri Belaid is warning bell in Tunisia, and in Egypt too. The response by Tunisian officials was being closely watched. President Monsef Marzouki cut short an overseas trip to deal with the crisis. The Prime Minister, Hamadi Jebeli, called the killing a heinous crime against the Tunisian people, against the principles of the revolution and the values of tolerance and acceptance of the other. Owing to the outrage, he said cabinet ministers would be replaced with technocrats not tied to any party until elections can be held. The announcement, which had been expected for months, held out the promise that Tunisia might continue to avoid the political chaos that has plagued its neighbors. Since the uprising, the country has held successful elections, leading to a coalition government merging Ennahda and 2 center-left parties. An assembly writing the country's constitution has circumscribed the role of Islamic law, allowing Tunisia to avoid the arguments over basic legal matters that have led to protracted unrest in Egypt. The struggle over identity here has taken a different form, as hardline Islamists have pressured Ennahda to take a more conservative path. Secular groups have faulted Ennahda for failing to confront the hardliners, or for secretly supporting them. The restructuring does not completely loosen Ennahda's hold on political power. The killing remained a mystery on Wednesday. The authorities did not announce any arrests, saying only that witnesses said the gunman had appeared to be no more than 30 years old. Among Mr. Belaid's colleagues and relatives, suspicions immediately fell on the hardline Islamists known as Salafists, some of whom have marred the transition with acts of violence, including attacks on liquor stores and Sufi mausoleums. Mr. Belaid, a leading member of Tunisia's leftist opposition alliance, criticized the governing party for turning a blind eye to criminal acts by the Salafists, and had received a string of death threats for his political stands, his family said. In a chilling prelude to his death, in a television interview on Tuesday, Mr. Belaid accused Ennahda of giving an official green light to political violence. Separately, he accused Ennahda mercenaries and Salafists of attacking a meeting of his supporters on Saturday. His wife, Bisma Khalfawi, blamed Ennahda, told Tunisia's state news agency that the authorities had ignored her husband's pleas for protection during 4 months of death threats. In a stunned Tunisia, as news of the killing spread, thousands poured into the streets in the capital and other cities. A crowd gathered in front of the Interior Ministry, a massive building that is still a hated symbol of Mr. Ben Ali and his security services, to express anger at the new government. Resignation, resignation, the cabinet of treason, people shouted. Riot police officers fired tear gas into the crowds and plainclothes security officers beat protesters, witnesses said, in scenes that recalled the uprising 2 years ago. In other cities, protesters attacked Ennahda's offices. The party vigorously denied any role in the killing, but the damage to its reputation seemed difficult to repair. Salman Sheikh, director of the Brookings Doha Center, said the assassination was a blow to the aspirations of Islamist parties taking the reins in democratic transitions in the region, most notably in Egypt and Tunisia. In Egypt, he said, the Islamists have failed to build consensus and trust, relying instead on a narrow majoritarianism. In Tunisia, he said, they built a coalition with liberals but failed to take a stand against more hardline Islamists competing for support on their right. Facing down extremists, Islamists find that very difficult, Mr. Sheikh said. In Tunisia, he said, the extremists included not only Salafi but more militant actors closer to al-Qaeda. They have not been very quiet in terms of their intentions, and yet Ennahda has not taken them on, he said. In Tunisia, some hope that the killing would serve as a warning not just about the dangers of political violence, but also about the authorities' refusal to confront it. Amna Gwelalai, a Human Rights Watch researcher based in Tunis, said the group had documented numerous attacks on activists, journalists and political figures by various groups, including the Salafi. The victims filed complaints to local tribunals, but never heard anything back, she said. There is a trend of impunity. This impunity can lead to emboldening attackers. Yesterday, Chokri called for a national dialogue to confront political violence, she said. This just adds to the tragedy.